You are live.
Good evening, Columbus community. It is Board President Adair, and I am calling the September 29th Board of Education Retreat, our special meeting, to order. Mr. Treasurer, please. I don't know if I have to. Columbus community. It is Board President Adair, and I am calling the September 29th. Technical problems. It's okay.
You're being echoed.
Yeah, it's all right. So we're good, and we will call the roll.
President Adair.
Present.
Ms. Beckerly.
Present.
Mr. Brown.
I'm here.
Mr. Cole.
Present.
Dr. Pierce. Mr. Ragland.
Here.
Vice President Reyes.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you so much. So this evening, we are here for a special meeting to begin the facility master plan process. And today's agenda, board members, is basically to hear an overview and discussion of the process from our team and to get our questions answered. And that is our agenda for the evening. So is there a motion to approve that agenda?
I'll move.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
President Adair.
Yes.
Ms. Beckerly.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Cole.
Yes.
Mr. Ragland.
Yes.
Vice President Reyes.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you so much. So we will go ahead and turn it over to our administrative team, and Dr. Stanford is going to lead us through the overview. So I will turn it over to him. Hi, Dr. Stanford. Don't forget to unmute.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and members of the Board of Education, good evening. And thank you for this opportunity to share some of the background of the district's facilities master plan and some of the history of the district's facilities program over the years. The administration is here tonight to share with you our thoughts about the process to revising the facilities master plan that the district has had in place since 2002. Go ahead and change this. Go ahead and put the slides up, Mr. Trevino.
I need screen share capability, please.
Okay.
Mr. Brown, I think we're going to need your help. I cannot do it as a co-host. Thank you.
Okay. Well, earlier this year, Superintendent Dixon asked me to facilitate the overall planning and oversight of this facilities master plan revision process. One of the first steps was to share the fun with some of my colleagues in the district by assembling a team, a planning team. And that planning team is comprised of Ms. Terry Burchak from the Internal Auditor's Office, Ms. Annette Maru from the Business and Operations Department, Ms. Misty Nichols, Board Services Office, Mr. Maurice Oldham, Business and Operations Department, Dr. Eric Rouse, Policy and Government Affairs, yours truly, Mr. Alex Trevino, Capital Improvements Office, and Mr. Scott Wortman from our Communications Department. Tonight's presentation will be primarily handled by Mr. Trevino and myself, but the rest of the team is here also to answer any questions and to support Mr. Trevino and myself in this endeavor with the Board of Education. In terms of background, we really wanted to emphasize to the Board of Education and the community that the district has a new vision that it's been developing with the community over the past year. Superintendent Dixon has been leading that process with Battelle for Kids, And that process was called the Portrait of a Graduate. And as a result of that process, we will have a clear vision of what the expectations are for our students to be graduates of Columbus City Schools. The other pillar of our foundation for this process will be the districts and the board's focus on equity. Superintendent Dixon has made equity a primary focus of her administration. And as a part of this process, we want to make sure that equity is a part of every deliberation and every step of this process moving forward. As we all know, educational programming and partnerships is a longstanding legacy as a part of Columbus City Schools Facilities Master Plan process. And Mr. Trevino will get into a little bit more detail of that history a little bit later on, but just wanted to share that with you all as a part of the background for the process that we are about to engage in. And so with that, I would turn it over to Mr. Trevino to go over some of the history of the Facilities Master Plan process and really the development of facilities in Columbus City Schools over the years.
Thank you, Dr. Stanford. So I wanted to share just a couple excerpts for you or with you from a very early facility master plan that we've identified that the district had authored in 1939. So this publication is called A School Building Survey of Columbus, Ohio. It was a publication authored by T.C. Holy, Earl W. Anderson, and H.H. Davis of Ohio State University's Bureau of Educational Research. And it was prepared likewise for the Board of Education at that time. That plan also looked back at history, noting the following. The first schoolhouse in Columbus was built of logs by Lucas Sullivan, probably in the year 1806. And then skipping ahead quite a bit, and also paraphrasing, it reads, Columbus became a separate school district on March 7th, 1838. On September 3rd of that year, at an adjourned meeting of the citizens, a committee was appointed to ascertain the probable cost of a suitable lot and schoolhouse and to recommend measures relative to common schools for consideration at a subsequent meeting. And it wraps up with a quote that reads in part, is not this the matter of more deep and vital interest than any other which can possibly command our attention? Does not the earthly prosperity, as well as the eternal welfare of our children, depend wholly upon their education? The document then goes on to state, one of the most important responsibilities which a Board of Education has is the location, planning, and construction of school buildings needed to carry on the educational program of the school district. School buildings as now constructed should have a lifetime of from 50 to 75 years. It then goes on to say, if school buildings are poorly located or unwisely constructed, children for a half century or more must suffer for those mistakes. The optimum situation then is a carefully planned building program based on an exhaustive analysis of both present and future needs, which can be checked from time to time when expenditures for capital outlay are contemplated. And I thought these words still ring very true today. So now skipping ahead to our more recent history, the only significant construction the district had undertaken from 1977 until more current times was the 2000 renovation of the 2nd Avenue School, and then the 2001 renovation of the Woodcrest Elementary School. And that was then followed up by the new design and construction of the first facility master plan building, Linden Elementary School, which opened in 2004. In 1997, the Ohio School Facilities Commission was established through Senate Bill 102 with the mission to provide funding, management oversight, and technical assistance to local school districts for construction and renovation of school facilities in order to provide an appropriate learning environment for Ohio's school children. In 2000, the OSFC contracted for development of our district's first master facilities planning framework. The plan was developed to be a comprehensive, long-range facilities plan based on the learning needs of students, the principle of schools as community centers, and developed with the participation of the community. In 2001, a consortium of engineering and architecture firms working under the OSFC and a construction manager performed a facility condition assessment of all district facilities. In 2002, the Board of Education at that time adopted a new facilities master plan. That plan would include the concept that it would serve as that comprehensive master plan for all academic facilities. It was based on replacing or renovating aging infrastructure rather than looking at expanding the district's capacity. The plan was designed to encourage flexibility and to changes in academic methodologies. It was also based on updated tools and guidelines to ensure that schools would be state-of-the-art learning facilities. Some highlights of that 2002 master plan include the district was broken into 6 planning areas to help organize the work. Those 6 areas represented the Northwest, Northeast, East, South, West, and Central City areas. And just to give some context, in 2002, the district was operating 144 schools with an enrollment of about 65,000 students. The facility master plan in 2002 recommended 130 either newly constructed or renovated facilities to serve an anticipated enrollment that just exceeded 65,000 students. And due to the complexity and breadth of that plan, the work was broken into 7 individual segments that were envisioned to be implemented over approximately 15 years. The plan also recommended a warm, safe, and dry program. This is really the predecessor to our current Operation Fix-It work, and it was responsible mostly for roof and boiler replacements to extend the life of those facilities until they could be replaced or renovated as part of the facility master plan. The plan was also developed to address educational adequacy and to ensure that classrooms were conducive to 21st century learning, to relieve overcrowding where it existed, and to address ADA accessibility issues across the district. In arriving at this point, a steering committee was formed and a series of community meetings held. Significant recommendations included the continuation of local community involvement in oversight and decision-making activities associated with implementation, considering the importance of historically significant school buildings in maintaining community identity and cultural history through preservation of those historically significant structures, incorporating the needs of special needs students into the planning to ensure that their physical and educational needs were met, and also including those support spaces and barrier-free design. A continuation of the district's history of collaborative planning and collaborative arrangements that include community and district partners, and the acknowledgement that the facility master plan must be a living document that will require periodic updates to reflect significant changes over its lifespan, and ensuring that the district continues to provide high quality and innovative programming. Core to the prioritization of this facility master plan work was to tackle worst condition facilities first, while also looking at regional equity across the city. The OSFC utilizes a 2/3 rule, where every building's condition is assessed, and if the cost to renovate exceeds 2/3 of the cost of new construction, the facility is automatically recommended for replacement rather than renovation. All options were considered for each facility, including new construction, renovation, renovation plus addition, as well as the potential for consolidations. At this time, historic buildings were also analyzed by the district in conjunction with the Columbus Landmarks Foundation, identifying those facilities that were historic and hold significant architectural significance. The district also successfully petitioned the OSFC to allow those identified facilities to be renovated, even when the costs were up to 100% of the cost of new construction. Then in November of 2002, the district was successful in passing a $392 million bond issue that funded both segments 1 and 2 of the facility master plan. The locally raised funds allowed the district to qualify for 30% matching funds from the state of Ohio. In total, this funding allowed the district to complete a total of 35 facilities across the district with a total investment of $514 million. In December of 2002, recognizing the need for that additional oversight and accountability, the Board of Education authorized the Neighborhood School Development Partnership, providing a community-based panel that would oversee this work and advise the Board of Education. The district then updated its facility master plan in 2008 as it contemplated new funding to continue the building program. Significant revisions at that time included a reduction in the plan from 130 facilities to 116 facilities, largely as a result of declining enrollment. Keeping in mind that during that time frame, the district's enrollment had decreased to approximately 55,000 students. There was also a desire to upgrade science labs across the district, including all middle schools and high schools, to support curriculum, as well as to increase security across the district by introducing new closed caption television and access control systems. Subsequently, in November of 2008, the district pursued a 1.13 mil bond issue as part of its levy request, which provided $123 million for facilities. Again, with 30% matching funds from the state of Ohio, the district was able to renovate or newly construct a total of 11 facilities with a total of $180 million of investment. Then in 2016, the district embarked on a new community-based effort to again revise the district's facility master plan. With a new enrollment projection indicating a stable population of 50,000 students over the upcoming 10 years, this work resulted in a plan that recommended a total of 111 facilities, down from 116 facilities recommended in 2008. And then to highlight major programmatic initiatives implemented by the district since 2002, those would include the International High School, the STEM academies, or those science, technology, engineering, and math focused schools, gender-specific boys and girls middle schools, the Columbus Global Academy, the Columbus Gifted Academy, a dedicated early childhood learning center at Linden Park, as well as increased adult educational opportunities. And then to review the district's current portfolio of academic facilities, there are a total of 112, and that includes 20 high schools, 20 middle schools, 66 elementary schools, and 6 special schools. Of those 112 facilities, one is currently closed for renovations, and that is the former Dominion Middle School, which is being renovated for the new dual immersion middle school. And then the district has also run 46 buildings through the facility master plan process. And of those 46 buildings, 34 have been newly constructed, while 12 of them have been renovated.
As the board knows, there is board policy guiding facility planning in the district. That board policy 7100 basically states the board's commitment to ensuring that learning environments are student-centered, efficient, and stable. It also ensures that facility planning must be grounded in accurate data. Interestingly enough, it also charges the superintendent with monitoring district enrollment, building usage, capacity, and building conditions. And based on this monitoring, the superintendent shall develop and update a building usage plan at least every 3 years. The board will receive such a report on usage, building capacity, state of building repair, enrollment over a 3-year period, and future enrollment trends from the superintendent. And so from a board policy perspective and giving the superintendent the authority to conduct this facility master plan process comes directly out of board policy 7100. One of the first steps in the process, the superintendent and I discussed that this facilities master plan revision process is going to be complex. It is definitely going to be time consuming. It will involve a lot of data collection and data analysis on the part of our staff. And so we felt very strongly that we would need an outside professional firm to help us with that process. That is not something unique. Several other districts around the country have done so. And the last time the district revised its plan, we did have a professional firm facilitate the process with our staff on board. And so the purchasing team and Mr. Oldham were asked to draft an a response for quotations, notice and timeline to hire a professional facilitator. That RFQ was posted in August. The selection committee was assembled in late August, early September, and they began the process of reviewing the proposals that have been submitted at this time. We are definitely on track right now to have a recommendation to the board in November. The timeline that we are proposing for this process is that we will post in early October a request for committee applications. And what I should take a moment and describe the structure that we are proposing for this process. So in addition to the professional firm to facilitate the process, we have an internal planning team that we introduced at the beginning of the presentation that will be responsible for working with the facilitator to coordinate, to deal with logistics of planning meetings with the community committee. And then there will be a group of internal professional experts made up of our district staff members that will be responsible for helping us assemble data, analyze data, and then present that data to the community committee and to the Board of Education. We also are recommending a community committee that will be comprised of community members that will be the primary group working with the facilitator and working with the district administrative team to present recommendations for revisions to the plan to the Board of Education. And so that process would begin with posting a request for committee applications from the community in October of 2020. In November of 2020, we should be ready to announce the committee members. Also in November 2020, we should be able to have a professional firm recommendation to the board to approve at a board meeting. And hopefully we would begin the first committee meetings in November. If the board and the superintendent felt that that was too soon and we would need a little bit more time, we also would be able to start those committee meetings in January of 2021. In March of 2022, the committee would present preliminary recommendations to the board that could be submitted to the Ohio Facilities Commission. That is very important because that commission has a process that they have to engage in with school districts that Mr. Trevino will explain a little bit later in this presentation. Hopefully they would be able to give us their feedback by May of 2022, and the committee would then make final recommendations to the board for the board to then hopefully vote on those final recommendations by June of 2022. Next slide.
All right, so to wrap up this evening, I did want to give an overview of the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission, and I should probably start out by addressing some confusion that I know we often get between OSFC and OFCC. So what was formerly the Ohio School Facilities Commission was merged with the Office of State Architect a handful of years ago and is now the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission. So there is no longer an OSFC, but they essentially fulfill the same role. So we do already have an assigned planner who is committed to working with our district hand in hand through this entire process. So I fully expect that, but just to kind of overview the OFCC process, we're going to expect that there will be facility conditions that we'll need to take a look at, helping to identify those priority projects where we need to tackle that worst condition first. We know that we'll have enrollment projections. And again, those would be a 10-year enrollment, looking to see what we expect to need to build capacity for. We will have that master facilities plan in the end, which will address every one of our academic facilities. we'll obviously need to spend a fair amount of time looking at budgeting. So exactly what will it cost to build out that master facility plan? And then within that, we'll be looking at those locally funded initiatives. And those are those items that the state will not share in the cost of. So when we reference that the state will share 30% of the costs, those locally funded initiatives are anything the state would not bring funding forward for, that the district would have to fund in its entirety. We'll be looking at segment agreements. So the state through the OFCC will ask us to enter into segment agreements, and those are generally looking at about 2 years worth of projects. So the funding that would be associated with those projects that would be kicking off within about 2 years. And then the state themselves looking to be able to bring in that 30% matching funds that we would look for to be able to complete our entire plan. And then just kind of dovetailing into what Dr. Stanford just talked about, looking at that OFCC timeline. If we're looking at that same 2022 timeline, we would be looking to take a preliminary facility master plan to them in March. And again, with them working with us hand in hand, I don't see that as being an issue. We would take the months of April through May to make sure that we are firming up those budgets to make sure we know exactly what that work is going to cost. The state rolls out a new cost set every spring. So we'd be incorporating that same data to make sure that we're working with accurate numbers. In June of 2022, we'd be asking the board to approve that segment agreement that I just referred to. And then in July, the OFCC would be taking it to their own commission to seek the same approval. And then in August of 2022, that same measure would then be going to the state controlling board to seek that actual 30% funding that would be coming in from the state. And now we'll happily turn it over for any questions you might have this evening.
Thank you, team. Members, are there questions?
I have a couple.
Member Beckerly?
I think I know what you mean by segment agreement, but I just want to make sure. Is it just taking the whole plan and having, this will be phase 1, phase 2? Is that what a segment agreement is?
So board member Beckerly, that's correct. So
Okay.
I'd have to look at the reports to see the exact numbers of buildings that were in segments 1 and 2, but in total it was 35 buildings. So what the state would advise is that you only put into a segment agreement a number of buildings you can kick off within that 2-year time period, because those budgets will be locked in at the time the board was to sign that segment agreement. So you don't want inflation to get ahead of you in terms of the longevity of when that plan would roll out. So so I know one thing that would be important to keep in mind, though, is that those segment agreements don't necessarily define any particular bond issue that the board might seek from the public. It's just a mechanism in terms of which projects would actually be moving forward at that one particular time.
But that's a requirement in order to get the state matching funds.
The segment
I
agreement
mean,
is
it
the
just sounds
actual.
like good planning.
It would be the actual. So if you think of the facility master plan is, let's just say it's another 15-year plan, that segment
Right.
agreement would be the first 2 years of it. And if there was funding, we would execute another segment agreement when we were ready to kick off the next 2
Okay,
years.
that was my next question. I didn't know if you were agreeing to all segments at once and then they would be time lapsed. But so with each 2-year segment, it's a new agreement.
That is an accurate statement. So if the facility master plan is conceptually agreeing to the total plan based on those enrollment projections, the segment agreement is based on that 2-year funding.
Okay, next question was, what's the anticipated board participation in the committee, on the committee? Or is there any? Maybe there isn't any. I don't know.
Do you want me to answer that?
Yes, please.
Yes. So we will be appointing members. So I did ask you earlier to share interest with me. So yes, there will be board participation in that committee.
Okay. I think that was all I had.
Additional questions? Board Member Ragland.
Thank you, Madam President. And Dr. Stanford, thank you and the team for the presentation tonight. I especially appreciated the history of the facilities master plan. I think that was a good foundation for us here. My question is more to my colleagues probably than it is to the administration or to Dr. Stanford specifically. The last type of facilities master planning process that we have, I am not so certain that it came out as a positive result for this board and for the district based on some of the recommendations that were made and some of the feedback that I've gotten from folks that have participated in that last iteration of a discussion around facilities. Understanding that this is, the beginning of a 3-year process for us, and we are seeking applications from the public starting next month to engage in this. I'm interested in hearing from my colleagues what we are willing to do to ensure confidence in the process. Understanding that what it is that we are engaging in are very difficult conversations for the public, heart-wrenching conversations when it comes to the prospects of schools closing, schools being consolidated, and as we kind of express them here in a very sanitized way tonight for the purpose of this discussion, we understand what that means, and we understand how the community responds to that and how the community is impacted by it. In knowing that the last process, I heard from committee members specifically who have essentially cut themselves off from any type of process in the future because the board was not responsive to the hard work that the committee did. Are there things that we can consider that would instill confidence in the process today so that we can get a good subset of applicants starting next month? I don't want there to be apprehension to sign up for this process because folks think that there would be a huge time commitment and then we would not follow through on the hard decisions in the end. So I'm interested in hearing some ideas so that the public can have some confidence. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Board Member Ragland, for that. That is something that's been at the top of my mind. And I'll turn it over. I know Board Member Brown had his hand up. I really hope that the public feels and sees that we are definitely moving more strategically through our processes. Just as the Portrait of a Graduate is a long-term 15-year plan, so is this, and they go hand in hand. And we know that in order to, provide the best education, that portrait that we're looking for, we're going to need buildings that support that. And the truth is, maybe what comes out of this process is that our current structure doesn't work. Our current buildings don't work because we need buildings and innovation that maybe doesn't even exist yet because of the portrait work that we are working on. So that's what the process is though. And we want to make it open. We want to have community involvement. The voice of the community is critical, and we have to have these hard conversations. It's an absolute must. Because we have to really consider what is the future of our district, even based on enrollment. I mean, I hope that through this portrait work, our numbers go up because we are going to be that public school of choice for everyone in our community because our education is, the top-notch education that we know it can be, and we have the talent right now that can do it, and we want facilities to match it. That's just my personal thought, as you asked, as a personal thought. So I'm really excited about this process. I'm excited with the alignment. I'm excited to have the community discussions and really build schools that are going to serve us for the future. So I agree with you, Board Member Ragland. It is definitely a concern. And just as, we engage the community in so many other ways in our district through the engagement group, through the Safe Schools Working Group, through lots of other ways, I really hope that the community is feeling that this board is taking this, a little bit of a shift, and we are really trying to be more strategic and really trying to listen and value the community, in a way that feels that you are being valued. Just as, we've come out to a lot of community meetings as a board to even discuss the strategic plan. So those are my personal thoughts. I will turn it over to Board Member Brown and then whomever else after.
Thank you. James, thank you for the question. It's really at the heart of what I've been thinking about as well, trying to figure out what we can learn from the past, and more importantly, how we can put this together and process all this information in a way that will get us to a good outcome, and an outcome that everybody can be comfortable with. One of my concerns, and it bore out at the last time we walked through this, and it's what you were, I think, referring to, and I don't want to dwell on it because you need to look forward, not back. But I think part of the problem several years back was that the board changed its thinking, and the board couldn't or wouldn't overcome some of the emotional tugs that came from parts of the community to be able to accept fully the recommendations of a committee that had worked long and hard. And that's a mistake that we want to make sure we don't do again. But I think, there's a couple of things we have to keep in mind. One, if we're going to kick off this process and make sure we've got a process that we have confidence in, then we need to be able to consider at least, the outcome, and that's something that we should commit to. And I'm not saying that we commit to that blindly, or we commit to accepting everything without further discussion and change, but doing it as abruptly as occurred the last time really didn't work. Secondly, I think that we need a process that will do a few things. One, as Jen said, as I know you feel, we have to have community participation and representation, and a place where people could share their feelings and their views and their ideas. And it needs to encompass lots of parts of the community, including, as I've always pointed out, the 85 or more % of the community that aren't engaged with the schools. There has to be an eye from that perspective as well. But we want to set up a process, at least I think we do. It's my view that can look at the data objectively, and that's one of my biggest concerns, is that there is a great deal of objective information and objective data, and we've got a policy that's pretty good in laying out the things that should and should not be considered. I think that it's important that we work through this and look to people for help that have some expertise, that are professionals in some aspects of, and nobody's going to be an expert in all of this. There's a lot of parts to it, but we need people who have some expertise in various parts who can help. And we need a lot of folks that are willing and can look at these objectively. When we did the full process, I think about 5 years ago now, could be wrong, but it was a very good process. But what we ended up focusing on was elementary schools, and to some extent, some of the middle schools. That's easier in many ways. Once we start talking about high schools, a lot of people have very strong feelings, many of which have nothing to do with the objective data and with our current needs and current school program that we want. We've got to have our strategic plan done, our portrait of a graduate will be done so that we have you know, a clear picture of what we want and what our expectations are. But you know, it's part of the trick. And I did this 25 years or more ago, 35, in another community. It's extremely difficult, especially if you're dealing with high schools, you're dealing with people's emotions. And I'm not saying we disregard those. They're important, but we can't let that drive the outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Brown. Dr. Pierce.
Thank you so much, President Adair, Board Member Ragland, for asking such a great question. So when I think about that question, I think about how much more work we need to do to truly engage our community. So I would like to see our board make a commitment that all materials will be translated in languages of the committee members, regardless of if it's the top 5 languages, that we will expand the application period so we can go out to the community and recruit a diversity of individuals to serve on the committee. As a community member that engaged in the process last go around, I was identified by a community organization. We can't assume that everybody is connected to a community organization. So we need to, as a board, make a commitment to meet people where they are and to pull people into the decision-making process. I would also like to see us make a commitment, as Board Member Brown said, to look at it from a holistic approach, to truly think about what's going to move our district forward. And in making that commitment, that if it means a tough decision of closing a school, that we commit to do what's best for our students and close that school, that we put our students first and put politics aside. So as you pose that question, Board Member Ragland, those are the types of commitments that I'm thinking that I will hope you all would be willing to support and to take forward as we move, not only to think about how our buildings advance our equity, but also how our equity policy aligns with the buildings and how we move forward into a 21st century with an authentic and a genuine commitment to include our entire community in the process.
Absolutely. Any other comments, questions? Board Member Beckerly.
I think, I mean, I didn't watch the last go around really closely, but it seems to me that there's, if we had sort of, you talk about the guardrails that AJ talks about all the time, if we set some guardrails on this process, and I'm almost thinking as we get closer to figuring out what, because there are objective, there are academic objectives, there is academic objective data based on curriculum, program, academic programming, demographics, all of that. But that is a straightforward, that does not take into account community. It doesn't take into account the emotional impact of the community. It also doesn't take into account the potential for a building to serve a greater community need. So it occurs to me as we need to do the academic thing first and figure out where we are. And that might be a pause point to say, okay, based on pure academics, this is the rational thing to do. And we've done all of our research and analysis and all of that, because there is a final conclusion to that. There is a result of that effort. And then say, now let's talk about a community. Are there other reasons, other things that we might use these buildings for rather than just shutting them down? Can we, at that point, let the community have some input. Say, okay, if it doesn't make sense to have X high school open, why don't we use it for a health clinic, or why don't we use it for a this or that or something else? And I'm just making stuff up here, but we give the community a chance to share their ideas then, and sort of take the time out before we get to the recommendation stage, I guess is my thought.
Thank you. Board Member Cole, did you have something?
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate all of the feedback that folks have been able to give. I like the one aspect of guardrail discussion around the administration being able to come to us with some alternative options that open a door of opportunity, or doors of opportunity for partnership with the city to be able to provide, and the county to be able to provide the resources that our communities, our neighborhoods need. Maybe even reimagine and redefine community school in that process, or better yet, neighborhood school in that process. How do we redefine or reimagine what is a neighborhood school, and what they provide? I think that we have some functional examples of that at West, and a few other places throughout the district, whether it is the offering of CTE curriculum that provides some access to defabrication equipment and things to that effect, in our partnerships with other higher ed, whether that is a health clinic of sorts, things that are, again, much needed community assets. I think it's time for us to see a little broadly, more broadly than that. This is not an old discussion, might I add. Excuse me, this is not a new discussion. This is a really old one. This goes back at least my tenure on the board, the last 7 years. This is the kind of conversations that I know me, Ramona, Shauna, and several of us had. So I realize that there's this word that we've been using called politics. I can speak for myself and how I make my decisions. I call it best judgment, and it's based on fact. It's based on what I see as right and wrong for a community and for our students and our staff. And it's based on the value of what I'm willing to gain or lose in the proposition. And more specifically to something that was made, a decision that was made by a body that we appointed to provide us some guidance or recommendations is the best word. We saw differently as a board. And I can say I personally saw differently as a board, because one of the variables that I don't think that we really considered until the last minute was student safety. And that was about the discussion of combining Linden McKinley and East. And there was this considerable community concern around that, because of things that happen outside of the four walls of our schools. So when we talk about holistic approach and holistic observation and view and evaluation of something, a recommendation, I think those are things that we need to, again, more broadly consider, because, our responsibility is to the safety of our students as well. I'm not trying to rehash the past. I made my decision in good faith, and what I thought was best for Columbus City schools and our more than 50,000 students, including staff. And I stand by that. But what I will say is here's an opportunity where I agree with every one of you that there's a new opportunity here to reimagine neighborhood schools and what kind of assets we want to see in our community. So I thank you for the feedback. I look forward to the process moving forward. That, again, might I add, is very similar to what we did previously. It was. Dr. Stanford, if you would, because I don't think that your presentation showed it, but we had over 50 people who were involved in the F&P process in 2016. A process, by the way, that got us a ballot initiative that's paying dividends to this day.
So as folks over the years have shared their points of view about where our students are lacking in capital improvements to buildings that provide amenities like HVAC or heating and cooling, this whole safe, warm, and dry initiative that we've seen pay dividends to this day. All of that comes from that committee from 2016, where we went on the ballot and found those dollars and the community supported it. So again, as we talk about courage of conviction, so to speak, maybe we have the courage of our conviction moving forward to go and bring a ballot initiative to the people for them to make a decision about how we move forward best for our students and our communities. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate that, Board Member Cole. And again, that is that holistic vision. So this isn't in a silo, right? And community stuff costs money. So just know at some point we will come with a ballot initiative. That is just how this works. And so don't be shocked when that happens. You know, and I want to echo something that several of you said. I mean, this really is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to learn and to improve and to reimagine, as Board Member Cole said, reimagine what our buildings do and function and are for our families and for our community. And that's part of the portrait as well. And I think, you know, approaching it where we, you know, make sure that we have all of the partners at the table, including our fellow sister government partners. You know, sometimes I think about when, you know, we built that, or the city built that, they're building the beautiful Linden Rec Center, and opportunities that could have been missed because cause is right across the alley. You know, because we aren't really working on strategic partnerships. And I think we're in a space now that our partners want to, and our community wants to. And it's just a really good, with everything going on in the world, I think we have a lot of opportunity, and that's really what I'm excited about in this whole process. And so I think, let's see, Board Member Reyes and then Board Member Beckerly.
Thank you, Board President. Just to kind of answer the question. So as my Board Member Cole stated, there's over 47 voting members. There's 13 non-voting members. Those of us who were involved back then, if you walked into some of the sessions, there was hundreds of people in some of these sessions. There's always room for improvement. So I would say where there may be an opportunity is, and this happens even when we close buildings, so we get committees together to make recommendations of closing or reimagining new programs, where there's sometimes a shift because not everybody, it's very difficult to get over 100,000 people to give you information of how they feel on any particular issue. So what happens is when you get 100, 150 people making recommendations and coming into a room to the board, then when the recommendation comes, that's when you get the other 25,000, 30, 35,000, and all the other recommendations, opinions, disagreements, agreements that are missed. So maybe there's something between when the group makes a decision, how do we get it vetted through the community, then brought back to the board, which is not a perfect plan, but as I continuously see, when that happens, when you get these members, and there was wonderful students on this committee, there was wonderful community members on these committees. I was not leading the project, but I definitely went to many of these meetings, and the engagement and the conversations were wonderful. And then, but the back end, as Board Member Cole, was intense. So what is that extra step that maybe we could add? Maybe that's something that we need to talk about, that gets from the recommendation to getting feedback, perhaps to broaden that feedback on those recommendations before they come to the board. That would be what I would see as maybe an opportunity for us to add a step there that may help us come to a conclusion, because it was very difficult. It is very difficult. I mean, you can't ask for more than 100, 150 people they committed, they were there, probably more so than some of us board members. They were there at every meeting. So that would be my suggestion. That would that bridge between the committee work, then back to the community, and then our commitment.
I think that's a great suggestion. It also parallels what Dr. Pierce said about upfront engaging, making sure everyone is engaged in different, we cover all the community. I think also now that everyone is beginning to get used to these Zoom meetings, we have a different format that we could encompass even when we, hopefully can have more in person and, hopefully, we're going into 2022 with this. So hopefully we won't be in COVID anymore, but we're learning through technology and we can utilize technology, I think, as a way to engage. So we have a little bit more tools. So I like that suggestion. I think Board Member Ragland had something else to add.
Yes, a couple of things, and thank you all for your feedback on this. When we first announced that we were going to engage in this, that's been at the forefront. All of this has been at the forefront of my thinking, and I really do appreciate hearing from all of you about your perspective, especially the historical perspective and some of the things moving forward. But to your point, Vice President Reyes, I think there are a couple of things that we can do as we are engaging the community as board members now in going out and, to your point, Board President Adair, having these direct one-on-one conversations with community organizations. I think that is the structure by which we might want to engage and get public feedback. But that also lends itself to my initial point as far as the makeup of the committee and making sure that we are deliberate and intentional in not just having those folks that you can expect to sit and serve on these committees make up our committee. What you mentioned, Board Member Reyes, which is so profound, is that there was a disconnect between the work that was done, and then when the announcements were made, then the community came back and the other 30,000 or so, whatever number you mentioned, showed up then. I think that there's a way that if we utilize non-traditional sources, the folks that we typically don't want to have in these types of settings, but we have them and we value their voices, and we are intentional about not just seeking them out, but asking them to be a part of these sessions, asking them to speak their truth, and asking them to be the forefront of the process itself back to those segments of the 30,000 that they represent. I think that's how we accomplish that goal. Oftentimes, and this is not just us as the Board of Education, but this is our other sister governmental entities as well. We create these blue ribbon panels of people who, they have very, very strong titles. And they have very strong positions, but the people who we really need to meet, that 30,000 that Board Member Reyes speaks of, they have absolutely no connection with them. And if we are intentional about making certain that we see this committee with young parents who will, their kindergartners are in school right now, and their first graders are in school right now, grassroots people who typically aren't invited into these settings because of whatever reason we can name, be it politics or anything else. Those individuals have voices. Those individuals have value to segments of the community that can help us. And then I think we should start this conversation off speaking to the broader community for the long term. I've already had discussions with people who have, I know you guys are talking about facilities tomorrow, and you better not be talking about closing my high school. I mean, I get it, right? I get it. And I say to them, well, sis, where do your kids go to school? Well, Pickerington. Well, hey, I love you. And I understand that you have this connection to your high school and to your alma mater, and I understand that it will always be near and dear to your heart. But you proved to me how well you are invested into this district by where you send your children to come to school. And far be it for you to come to me and voice your support for your particular high school without any type of data that shows anything for or against it, when your children don't even attend school in this district. And so I think that is a real conversation that we have to start having with the public, because I too was a part of several of those meetings back in the day when we were having these discussions. I attended them and voiced my support and filled out my paperwork as well. And a lot of people that I was looking at came to those meetings and had not been inside a district building for a number of years. Their children had not been inside a district building ever. And they were very loud and vocal in their support for what they felt the board should be doing because it was their school. And so we've got time on our side now, and really having an honest discussion with the public, starting now through this committee appointment process, I think will bear us some really good fruit in the end of it. So thank you so much, all of you, for your feedback tonight. I really enjoyed hearing from you all today. Thanks a lot, Board Member Adair.
Okay, we have a few more comments. I want to touch on something you said. I think it's really critical that in this process, as we engage the community and we work through, and especially if we use Vice President Reyes' suggestion about bridging that after the recommendations, it's really this effort and this journey that we're all going to start taking together as a full community on the why. Why are we doing these things? Why are we going to suggest closing the building? Why are we suggesting changing theater path, whatever we're going to do? I mean, making all this up. But it's critical that people understand the why and how the why ties to where we're going in our strategic vision of the district. These things are not silos. And it also is the why we're going to ask for money. And the why that we are continuing to improve policy, and the why of choosing academic programs, the why of changing curriculum, all of it is tied together. And I think that, I guess what I'm hearing, and maybe something we can consider and start thinking about, is making sure that those critical pieces of the why are infused throughout and built throughout the process, and a critical part of how we engage our community. I think that gets lost sometimes. Okay, I believe that Board Member Cole and Board Member Beckerly.
Thank you, Madam President. Just very quickly, the recommendation I'd like to make to my colleagues and as guarding rail to the administration as they help guide this process is based on Mr. Ragland's comment about looking, turning the stones for the unusual suspects, those who those who we don't typically usually look at. I know that was a process that I'd like to see us continue because we did that in 2016. We looked regionally. We looked at every given neighborhood and specifically tried to solicit support from people from all over the city who were part of this, and also multi-layered in sector, if you will, whether they were business, whether it was nonprofit, whether it was public engagement as well. So those kind of employment sectors we looked at as well. But I would definitely like to see us continue to engage the city on a neighborhood for neighborhood basis to solicit their involvement in this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Pierce, I think I missed you. Did you have something? I think I might have missed you.
No, I'm just enjoying this conversation.
Okay, thank you. And Board Member Beckerly.
I just think, and maybe this goes without saying, but I think we should build in, I love the neighborhood idea. Neighborhood by neighborhood idea is really important. And then I think we also should build in in the overall time frame of the process, stop and share with the community. And to almost enforce a discipline on ourselves to say, okay, we're at this point, we're going to stop and share. We're at this point, we're going to stop and share. Because I think there's a few different targets, especially once we get to that finite about what makes sense program-wise, curriculum-wise, academically. And then there's the bigger community question. Our target is, yes, the why, to Jen's point, and that it's the programming is driving the why, and the population and the demographics and all the other things. But I think also the we want the targets of the communication at these stopping points are multifaceted, because it's the people that James talked about who are going to be upset that we might be closing their high school, who don't even have anything to do with the district, but they just love their high school. Then it's the people that James and Michael are talking about, which are the neighborhood people, the young families, the people who have other reasons. And it's also to say, hey, government partners, hey, Children's Hospital, hey, big agencies, this is a community building, has a role in the community already. Let's get creative now and like highlight it, you know, kind of like shake everybody, like before we go any further, let's really think about this. And so if we build those time, I guess that's another guardrail really. But I think that would be key. And then we'll force ourselves to have some discipline in the process.
Thank you for that point. Dr. Pierce and then Board Member Brown.
So as I hear us talking about engaging the community, I think, again, we need to be intentional around not just sharing information or telling the community what we're doing or how we're moving forward. It has to be two-way communication where we're listening to the ideas from the community and we're acting on those ideas in meaningful ways. So again, another suggestion that I would have is that maybe we create some type of drop box that is located in every school, where if a parent or a caregiver wants to give a comment about the process, they're able to drop that card in with that information. Maybe we can have them stationed throughout the community at various organizations, Children's Hospital, various hospitals where we know people are going in and out of those buildings or facilities. Again, coming from the premise that not everyone can engage through technology. There are some people who do not have internet access, do not have the hardware to even engage in the process or watch a Facebook meeting. So how are we intentionally thinking about a process that provides that two-way communication between us and the community throughout this process?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Pierce. Similar to what Board Member Beckerly was talking about. Good point. Board Member Brown.
Thank you. I really appreciate what I'm hearing from all of you tonight. And I have a great deal of confidence in this board, in this group, that we're going to work through this process and we're going to get it done as well as it can be done. What I want to make sure that we keep in mind is that we would love nothing better than to provide the absolute best facilities that we can. But when we do that, we have to keep in mind the part that Jen mentioned a couple of times, which is the end result of this entire process is going to take us to a place where we need to ask the community for money. And that's inevitable. We all know that. When we do that, we have to have a plan that we can get the entire community, not just the school community, but the entire community to be willing to say yes to. That, I think that our school folks, our administrators, our teachers, all of our staff people will perform and do their best for our students, and they will rise to meet the expectations of the community. But we have to keep those expectations in mind and not design something that the voters won't approve. So we need to make sure that we include folks from those perspectives as we work through this process and get some realistic input. We we can't look solely to who volunteers and applies and steps up. Those folks will be there. But there are many other folks that would never think to step up or apply or volunteer or may not even hear about things. And we need to work hard to identify many of those things so that we have the perspectives of those folks represented in this process as well. And that will help keep us realistic. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands or notes. So I think that this would conclude this conversation. I think this was really good discussion, board. And I hope that it provided the administration also some essential feedback. We will continue on with the process. So Dr. Stanford, Alex, I know you're not on the screen. Any last things that you need from us as we continue into the process?
Not at this time. You have provided exactly what we needed at this point in time, and that was the type of discussion that you all just had. Some of the ideas that you have shared with us, I've already taken some notes, and we're going to try and start having some more conversations with our planning team and with individuals like Ms. Gillison to see how we might be able to come up with innovative ideas to engage the community more so in this process. I think one of the most important things I heard tonight is that engage the community along the way, as opposed to developing something and then engage them at the end of the process. And I really love that idea because I am a big community engagement person. And with the technology that we have discovered during this pandemic, I really do believe there are ways that we can engage the community throughout the process and get that feedback throughout the process. And, maybe we can get donations to put boxes around the community that have CCS branded on them as a part of this process. Reimagine Me boxes maybe, or something to that effect. So yes, you have provided us what we needed at this particular point in time, but I guarantee we're going to need additional guidance and input from you along the way. So this won't be the last time we will talk to you about this idea and this project.
Excellent. So just a reminder to board members, if you are interested in actually committing, you can go to any of the meetings, but if you are committed to sitting on the committee, please let me know, and Ramona and I will discuss the appointments to the official appointments, but know that obviously you can attend and participate as a community member if you are not officially put on the committee. Okay, well, I think that then that concludes our agenda for the evening. I appreciate all of you. I appreciate the team and the work that you are doing. This is a heavy lift and we know it and we appreciate you. And I want to just give a shout out to Alex and whoever did that presentation, because you guys know I love history. And so all of those photos and like that history talk, I was like, I love it. So, it's a great celebration of our 175 years as a district, and we are preparing for the future, and it's really exciting. So thank you all this evening. The last thing we have is just a motion to adjourn.
I motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Ms. Beckerly,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Cole,
Yes.
Dr. Pierce,
Yes.
Mr. Ragland,
Yes.
Vice President Reyes,
Yes.
President Adair.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Excellent. Thank you all and have a wonderful evening. See you tomorrow, board
See you
members.
tomorrow.
Bye.
Good night.